Okay, so far we have been involving users in the design process. We are trying to test the usability of our products by asking the user to provide feedback and by asking them to give us the opportunity to observe them as they use the system. There's another method of assessing the usability of a developed product. It's called heuristic evaluation. So let me start off with a brief history of heuristic evaluation. So heuristic evaluation method was developed by Jacob Nielsen in the early 1990s, and it's based on the heuristics or design principles that we saw earlier in the class. And those design principles, if you don't remember, here they are. If you remember, we talked about visibility of the system status, match between system and real world, user control and freedom, consistency and standards, error prevention and recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency of use, aesthetics and minimalist design, help users recognize and diagnose, recover from errors, help and documentation. So these were 10 design principles, Nielsen's design principles that we looked at earlier in this course. And these same design principles are the basis of heuristic evaluation. And these design principles, although they were originally developed for websites again, because websites were the first digital product, now they have been modified over time and they have been adapted. They can currently be used for other digital products as well, like mobile devices and wearables and virtual worlds and social media. Idea behind heuristic evaluation is that a set of experts, they get together and they pick each of these Nielsen's heuristic or design principle, and try to see whether the product that they have been assigned to evaluate, whether it's fulfilling this principle of design or not. How well does it do that? So they go through each of these principles and then they evaluate the interface against this principle and they come up with a rating. And in the end, they report their ratings to each other. So they do it separately first, they come up with a rating, and then they share their ratings with each other. And in the end, they come up with like a final rating and some recommendations for improving the design. So this method, as you can see, it does not involve the user. So there are some ethical implications of it, because if you are going to be designing a product for the user but you're not involving the user in it, then there's some ethical issues there that we are ignoring our user. But typically a heuristic evaluation is done after a product has already gone through a usability evaluation with the user themselves. So other issues with heuristic evaluation is that it can be really expensive, because it's usually done by experts. Experts, they charge a lot of money for their time, and it can also be very difficult because it's details. The expert, they get into very nitty-gritty, fine-grained issues. They focus on, for example, the font size or the font style or the color, whether the color is too bright or just appropriate, or whether the placement of the widgets look okay, and such very small details that we don't necessarily think about. And as the expert, they have more and more knowledge, they become more and more expensive. And but the good thing is that the experts, they are able to sometimes find out problems that the users were not able to find out. So, but it's also possible that some experts have biases. So based on their previous experiences, they might favor one kind of design versus another. And sometimes they are just focusing on too many trivial problems that are not important for the user. So there are some issues with it, but it's also a good idea to do it after the product has already been tested by the user. So heuristic evaluation is done by a group of evaluators, by trained experts. Nielsen suggested that on average, 5 evaluators should work together. If 5 evaluators, they are involved in assessing the usability of a product, they will be able together they will be able to find 75 to 80% of the usability problems. Okay, so in other words, Nielsen recommended that we involve at least 5 experts in heuristic evaluation. But then there are other people, they said that it really depends on the product itself. 5 evaluators are not necessary for every single kind of product. It really depends on the type of product that has been developed, the type of tasks it's supporting, the context in which the product is going to be used. But anyway, it has been found that too many evaluators are not needed. One evaluator will only be able to find about 30% of the problems. 2 evaluators will find maybe 40%, 3 will find 60, 4 will find maybe 70, and 5 will go up to 75. But when you go to 10, like let's say from 5 you go to 10, and then 10 is also finding maybe 85%. So there is not much use in having too many evaluators, because they're not able to find too many problems, and they can find more problems, but most of those problems are going to be very trivial, so it's just better to stick with 5. Okay, another thing to think about in heuristic evaluation is that depending on the product, so if it's a website, although it's recommended to go through all the heuristic, all the design principles of Nielsen, sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes it's just we can just pick a few of those design principles and focus on them. So for websites, it's recommended that evaluators just focus on the clarity of the website. They focus on noticing whether the design is able to minimize the complexity and minimize the cognitive load on the users, and whether it's providing enough context to the user, and whether it's promoting a positive and pleasurable experience for the users or not.